We are playing a game of What's More Likely on today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins as training camp continues and the team gets ready for a preseason game against the Philadelphia Flyers on Friday. Let's get into it, shall we?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Beat. Today is Thursday, September 28th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine here in September as we get ready for a brand new season. If you have not done so already, please go to your favorite podcast app, go to YouTube, search up Locked On Boston Bruins, hit that subscribe button so that you do not miss a thing. If you're on social media, you can find the podcast at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my dad jokes, hockey thoughts, at Ian C. McLaren. The Bruins practicing again today following more on-ice sessions on Wednesday. They're preparing for a preseason game against the Philadelphia Flyers on Friday. And be sure to keep it locked here to Locked On Bruins for all the latest on the black and gold. Today, we are playing a game of What's More Likely. We take a few scenarios and discuss whether or not A or B is more likely. Pretty simple. Let's start with Pavel Zacha, shall we? And Brad Marchand was pumping up his possible new center at practice the other day. Zacha, I think, is ready for a pretty prominent role with the Boston Bruins. Marchand, of course, has played with Patrice Bergeron for many, many years until the former captain's retirement. The new captain saying Zacha took a massive step last year. He has incredible vision, a really good two-way player like Bergie, and perhaps he has an even higher level to hit in 2023-2024. And if we're saying whether or not it's more likely that Pavel Zacha breaks out and scores 100 points or Pavel Zacha tanks and can't hang with the Boston Bruins top six as a center, I am going with the upside for sure. Dauber Hockey has him as a potential 75-point player this season. And I think that's not out of the question. He had 57 points last year, 21 goals in 82 games. And he's coming in not unlike Linus Ullmark last season. I think that's a fair comparison. Ullmark, in his first year with the Bruins, stumbled a bit out of the gate, and he admitted that it took him some time to get used to a new city, a new system, new teammates, new coaching staff, etc. Now, Zacha had some familiarity with the area, having had an off-season home there, but he's coming in with a full season in black and gold under his belt, and he is even more comfortable this season than he was last year, just because of that familiarity. He's coming in. He knows what's expected of him. He knows that there is a role open for him in the middle. He has chemistry with David Pastrnak. He's getting some reps here with Brad Marchand. He skated with Marchand in the offseason, and he admitted that it's a whole new ball game this year as he is more comfortable coming in. There's a little bit more pressure. He, had to step up in the playoffs. He is getting more opportunities, more chances to play. That's what every player wants to do and wants to get better at. And, there's a reason why Pavel Zacha was drafted so high back in 2015. What was it? 5th or 6th overall. He was highly touted out of junior. He played for the Sarnia Sting of the Ontario Hockey League. He had 64 points in 51 games following his draft year. For whatever reason, didn't quite pop in New Jersey, but he has a new lease on life in black and gold. And that time at center last spring, when Krejci missed several games at the end of the regular season and during the playoffs, gave him a leg up as he continues to build chemistry with his countryman in David Pastrnak. He's also learned from Brad Marchand, telling me the whole summer how he trains. Zacha said of Marchand, he was able to watch him, trying to get better with him. One reason why Brad's captain is because he's a great leader and he knows how to talk to players and how to make them feel comfortable. So that's how he was to me the whole summer. Zacha continued, trying to make me feel comfortable, coming to the center this year and doing my best. End quote. So Marchand has been instrumental teaching Zacha what it takes to step up and be a contributing member of the Boston Bruins, a key member of the Boston Bruins. I think 75 points is not out of the question. I think he's going to pop playing with either Brad Marchand or David Pastrnak. He was highly touted coming out of junior for a reason. He was taken so high by the Devils for a reason. And I think this full summer in Boston, working with Marchand, seeing how dedicated he is, helped push Zacha to improve his own training habits in preparation of the new season. And he's going to take another step forward. I really believe that's more likely than him taking a step backwards out of the shadow of Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci. He's going to step up, and I'm really excited to see what Pavel Zacha is going to be able to do here this coming season. All right, coming up after the break, we are going to discuss what's more likely, whether Matt Grzelcyk is traded or Mason Lohrei sent back down to Providence. We'll also touch on the professional tryout guys coming up later on, but we'll get to all that here after the. Are you missing the syrup for your pancakes or just ran out of your favorite coffee creamer? With DoorDash delivery groceries, you can get what you want right when you need it. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery delivery that actually delivers too. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. You'll get exactly what you ordered, or we'll make it right. Sit back and enjoy quality groceries just like you picked them yourself. If you want even more value, you can save on all your grocery and restaurant favorites with a $0 delivery fee on all eligible orders with a Dash Pass membership. With easy subs right in the app and best-in-class customer support, DoorDash delivers groceries exactly how you want them. Right now, you can get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to a $20 value when you use code LOCKED at checkout. That's 50% off up to a $20 subtotal, $0 delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKED. That's code LOCKED for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Boston Bruins part of your daily routine. On tomorrow's episode, we will preview the game against the Philadelphia Flyers, as well as bring you all the latest from training camp. All right, so yesterday there was a report on Boston Hockey Now saying that there are a lot of teams interested in Bruins defenseman Matt Grzelcyk. Jimmy Murphy quoted a Northeast-based NHL pro scout as saying, "Chatter is picking up more as I scout preseason games." The scout added, teams are starting to see if maybe they have a young player that can make the jump or eat up more minutes. Look what Mason Lohrei did in Buffalo the other night. Sure, he made some mistakes, but he didn't get down on himself, and he ate some minutes. I watched him a lot last season. I think he could be ready for the show, end quote. So the premise here is that if Lohrei has another impressive showing, would the Bruins consider exploring the trade market before the season begins to see if they can create some cap space by trading Matt Grzelcyk, who's entering the final year of a 4-year, $14.7 million contract? Or what about defenseman Derek Forbort entering the final season of a 3-year, $9 million contract? This scout said, don't know about Forbort, but I can tell you that teams are interested in Grzelcyk. Maybe Don Sweeney should ring up Kyle Davidson again in Chicago. Grzelcyk is better than any left shot D they have, and they have cap space. He could be great on their power play. End quote. That would be interesting for sure. Grzelcyk joining Taylor Hall and Nick Foligno in Chicago, the team that the Bruins opened their season against on October 11th. Lohrei did look very good against the Sabres the other night. Like I mentioned on yesterday's podcast, he was matched up against some top competition in Tage Thompson, and was a positive possession player in that game. Made some mistakes, which is to be expected, but looked not out of place. Again, quality of competition comes into play here. Not a full NHL lineup. He's not going to be playing 30 minutes against, the Toronto Maple Leafs per se, but it begs the question whether or not you trade Matt Grzelcyk to free up some cap space to maybe sign some of these PTO guys, or you send Lohrei to Providence for further seasoning. What I would love to be most likely is Derek Forbort moved off the roster. That would be most ideal, but of course, as this scout mentioned, there's probably not much in the way of interest there, and they might have to place him on waivers, bury him in the AHL like they did with Chris Wagner and Mike Riley in the past. That would be my preferred scenario. I would like to keep Matt Grzelcyk. In terms of what's more likely, trading Matt Grzelcyk and promoting Lohrei, or keeping Grzelcyk and sending Lohrei to the AHL, I think it's the latter option. If the Bruins want to remain successful this season, that defensive consistency, I think, is key. They have prioritized keeping the defensive group together, minus Connor Clifton and plus Kevin Shattenkirk. And it's not dissimilar to what the Tampa Bay Lightning did in 2019 when they lost to Columbus in the first round. They kept the defense core together, and then we saw them go to the Stanley Cup final and even win the next year. I'm not saying that's going to happen with the Bruins, but that consistency is key in terms of mitigating any unnecessary regression. There will be some regression. We all know this. The Bruins will not be the team they were last year, but you can mitigate that by remaining consistent on the blue line. If you're going to make some subtractions, it must be Forbort. Grzelcyk, McAvoy, one of the best defensive pairings in the NHL. And if you want to get the most out of McAvoy, if you want him to be at his best, keeping him with Grzelcyk is key, I think. So what's most likely, unless they're blown away with an offer and it's not just a salary dump, I think it's more likely that Lohrei starts the season in AHL. Again, there's no shame in Lohrei going to the AHL. There's no shame in Matt Poitras going to the OHL. These are still young players, and you want to develop them right. NHL, I don't believe, is a developmental league. it's not always the best just to throw guys into the deep end. We saw, that with Pavel Zacha. Maybe he needed more time in the AHL before being thrown onto the Devils roster where he didn't quite pop. That's most likely, I believe, in my books, that Grzelcyk is kept and Lohrei sent down to the Providence Bruins. We're going to talk about Danton, Heinen, Alex Chiasson, and what's most likely for them here coming up after the break. All right, Bruins fans, let's talk about our PTO boys in Danton, Heinen and Alex Chiasson. The Bruins at the moment have $429,000 in projected cap space. They have no LTIR used. They don't really have anybody who's a candidate at this time. Of course, they have $334,000 in dead cap space owed to Mike Reilly after buying him out. They also have those bonus overages that are being paid to David Krejci, or not to them, but for them in terms of David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron from last season. So that's not helping anything. Now, if the Bruins want to sign Danton, Heinen and or Alex Chiasson, it will undoubtedly be something around $825,000, let's say. In order for them to do that, they would have to either, like we just talked about, trade Matt Grzelcyk or Derek Forbort, or send some guys down to the AHL. Patrick Brown, AJ Greer would be the likely candidates there. At present, they have 12 forwards under contract. So you subtract them, add Chiasson and Heinen, maybe Lauko as well, and then you have your lineup set. And that's keeping Jesper Boqvist, who I think has shown enough to earn a spot here. That's the way that it would happen. So what's more likely? The Bruins commit to Heinen, Chiasson, and waive Patrick Brown, AJ Greer, or they say thanks for coming to training camp and good luck elsewhere. I don't know. That's a tough one at this point. To be honest, I had thought that Heinen was pretty much a lock to make the opening night roster. Didn't see a ton from him the other night in the Buffalo game, and haven't really seen, I don't know if we've seen Chiasson in an exhibition game yet, but he has yet to light the lamp. That's what he's here for, is to score, to give a boost to the power play. I'm not hugely enthused by the prospect of having Patrick Brown on the lineup, a 31-year-old kind of journeyman. Yes, he's a good faceoff guy, penalty killer, but I don't know, it doesn't really excite me too much. AJ Greer, he, tried to get things going by dropping the gloves the other night. Not a hugely successful round for him. I think he may be kind of lost in the shuffle with respect to Jacob Lauko being on the roster, Milan Lucic, James Van Riemsdyk, Trent Frederick to a certain degree. All those guys bring what Greer does and more. You kind of made Greer a bit redundant by bringing on Lucic in that fourth line role. Now, Lucic may not be able to play every night, but still, do you need two of those big banging fighters out there? Maybe not. Has Heinen done enough? I don't know. It's tough to say at this point. Has Chiasson done enough? It's going to be super interesting to see what happens here with respect to the lineup. I think the top 9 is pretty solid with Marchand, Pasternak, Coyle, Zacha, DeBrusk, Frederick, Geeky. And really, I think Jesper Bolkvist has shown enough I would love to see a line of Geeky, Frederick, and Bolkvist. I think that could be a sneaky good third line. When it comes to the fourth line, you have Lucic, Beecher. Lauko took a couple penalties last night. Maybe he didn't do himself any favors. Maybe you go with Lucic, Beecher, Heinen for some defensive responsibility there. Chiasson as your extra guy who can maybe spot Lucic on some nights and try to get the power play going. With Greer and Brown kind of the victims there. I don't know. There's some really interesting decisions to be made by Don Sweeney. Obviously, he was interested enough in those guys to see what they could bring to training camp. Brown, Greer, easily variable in the AHL. Perhaps one of the defensemen will be waived as well. Forbort. Maybe Ian Mitchell, although he's on a cheap contract. You can keep him up. He played pretty well the other night. Maybe they cut bait with Jakobs Borrell. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how things shake out. But at this point, I think it's more likely that Heinen and Chiasson are retained than they are just dropped. Because you can put Greer and Brown in the AHL, call them up if necessary. But if you cut bait with Heinen and Chiasson, then those are just two assets that are just gone for nothing. So I think in the end, that's what's going to happen. That's it for today's episode, my friends. I hope those of you watching on YouTube enjoy the new backdrop. We got some Bobby Orr in the background, Willie, Bruins book, Locked On mug, some Bruins paraphernalia in the background. Got a new office set up here that I'm excited about. And that's it for today, my friends. Keep it Locked On Boston Bruins for all the latest on the black and gold. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.